Hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk about zero trust and how organizations adopt zero trust, the different points from which where they start this journey, and the challenges they face. And I'm Ash Lakshmanan, Security Services Product Manager. I focus on attack surface management and managed detection and response here at Dell Services. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Justin to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Justin Vogt. I'm a principal security engineer here with Dell Technologies, and I help customers manage their cyber risk.
Hi, I'm Tracy Emerson. I'm the Director for Solution Adoption for Dell's Project 4.0.
To level set, before we start this conversation, when we think about zero trust, what we're really meaning is the shift towards always verify, never trust, and make sure we start with the principle of least privilege, right? These are the foundational elements we're thinking about as we have this conversation. To that, I want to, ask Justin and Tracy here, how can organizations determine their journey towards the zero trust, right? The zero trust setup, and what are the type of activities they can do, incremental or something dramatic towards these, towards this end, towards this outcome that customers want.
Justin, I'm happy to take that one if you would like.
Go. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I think when we think about zero trust and how to adopt zero trust, what we really need to focus on is a notion of a paradigm shift. What we need is to look at our security posture different than how we have in the past, getting away from traditional perimeter-based network security solutions and more towards a micro-segmented, data-centric architecture. So zero trust is not really the same as how we've treated IT in the past. It's not just grabbing another IT solution, bolting it on, and saying, hey, we're good to go. Instead, it's more of a journey that has an increasing urgency as we traverse through this space and as cyber criminals get craftier and craftier in their trade. Really, I think that there's three approaches to that a customer or organization could take when looking at zero trust. One, a brownfield approach, which is really taking your current environment and retrofitting it in an iterative manner so that you can get to a level of zero trust compliance. A second one leverages really hyperscalers in those major cloud service providers, and it's leveraging or piggybacking off of their approach to get to a requisite compliance level of zero trust. And the third, which is a comprehensive approach, is greenfield. So it's ground up, building out your own private on-premise zero trust solution architecture.
Cool. Thank you, Tracy. Justin, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would say my observations in the field is, my advice to clients is, achieving a zero trust posture. It's a lot like a philosophy or even exercise, right? If I said, go achieve good health, like, what does that mean? It's an iterative process that you kind of, pick a starting place, and that's different for everybody, whether that's a brisk walk, going to the gym, changing your diet. But you got to pick a starting place and put one foot in front of the other and start driving at it over time. Sometimes I see clients where they'll say, hey, I've got a zero trust initiative, and we'll start to have a conversation. What does that mean to you? What is that? Oh, well, I've got diagrams and I'm doing studies and I'm preparing for giant architectural shifts, and all those things, they need to be in our roadmap and our horizon. But there's things that we can do today. It's as simple as, not trusting, verifying everything and adhering to least privilege where we can. So I would say, a really big call out is zero trust can be something that we apply in our existing environments today as we're moving and advancing our environments and adding new capabilities going forward. The other piece that I seem to end up having a lot of conversations with is zero trust in the context of a supply chain, right? When you think about where our technology is coming from, where our software is coming from, firmware, all the different hands that touch that technology along the way. And that's a question all customers should ask, which is, before this showed up and I gave it to my CEO, or before this showed up and I installed it in my data center, or I subscribed to it in someone else's cloud, who else had access to it? What is it made out of? What else is running below the surface? And how can I take these principles of not trusting, having some kind of verification process and some sort of least privilege posture to the technology that I'm consuming, even if it's upstream in the technology supply chain?
Cool. I love it. And what I love about what's being said so far is there are many paths to Shangri-La, but there are some very foundational elements here that we need to think about, right? So as we discuss this, do we have some specific use cases we can talk about? Specifically, I want to simplify this to the three categories Tracy talked about and talk about specific use cases and what kind of factors determine kind of the success or the failure in that category, right? And we can start with either one, the full shift greenfield, or we can start with the incremental.
Well, Tracy, do you want me to take incremental and then you can kind of unpack what a shift in greenfield would look like?
Yeah, I think that would be perfect, Justin. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah. Well, again, when we decide that we want to start aligning to this philosophy, the first thing we need to think about is, okay, not going to trust. How do I verify? And that's going to come in the form of what different security signals do I have? What telemetry do I have? What kind of logs do I have? We're kind of changing our philosophy where we would traditionally have controls in place that would keep something from happening, whether that was on the wire or in an application or on a device. And rather than having these barriers and these controls, we still have those, but it becomes critically important where we layer in, okay, what kind of signals can I pull out of my environment? And we start moving from this idea of, blocking what we know to be bad to recording what's happening so that we can apply context to it. And that can come in a lot of forms, right? What am I doing for endpoint logging? What's my data strategy as it relates to security, whether it's SIM or XDR or what have you? Once we have these telemetry sources and we've started to operationalize all of this kind of background radiation of security data that's coming out of our environment, the next piece is we can start to add some very logical, nuanced access decisions, whether it's access to the network or access to an application. So when we start talking about, brownfield and helping customers take the technology they have and align to this idea and this philosophy, the name of the game is accept that, the breaches are going to happen if they haven't happened already, and start going through and saying, all right, what are my data sources? How can I turn up that fidelity? And then once I bring the data in, all right, how can I start to get some value out of it? How can I make the data turn into wisdom? Okay, now that I have wisdom, how can I use that wisdom to inform where and how individuals or services can interact with my data? Because it's always about protecting the data. Tracy, what about in a greenfield approach?
Oh, that was great, Justin. And I can't agree with you more. When we look at zero trust from a holistic standpoint, when we take a step back, it really is all about the data. And so we look at things, and when we start to derive use cases, it's about how do I best protect that data? It's accepting that there are going to be cyber criminals, there's going to be adversaries inside your network. Like, you are not going to stop that. That's the getting away from the perimeter mindset. So a great example of a use case, and I will talk about this specific to the Greenfield Project Fort Zero approach. But when we look at the idea of detecting, isolating, and mitigating malware risk, right? This idea of lateral movement through the network. What Project Fort Zero does is a on-premise greenfield zero trust architecture that's holistic, so comprehensive across an advanced level of zero trust. Is it leverages edge firewalls to help to defend against malware. And additionally, it leverages a robust machine learning and AI process to help to effectively fingerprint all the things that are happening and occurring on a network that today isn't always being done because there's just too much traffic, too much volume. Because in a zero trust architecture, everything is logged. And so now you have all that data available. Well, how that becomes important is now that we can start to analyze all the network traffic and leverage a threat intelligence suite to help correlate what we're seeing. Those can then be driven by policies and governance to make decisions that in the past we were either too slow or just simply didn't see at all in order to prevent the ability to do or execute lateral movement. And more importantly, to reduce the ability to remove or exfil data from the system.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Tracy. That was a lot of information, but definitely data sits at the center of all that you said. What I want to ask is, look, when you go to customer environments, there's such varied environments, right? You have the customer that has 30, 40 tools, an in-house security, setup of maybe 3, 4 security practitioners. You have the customer environments where there are 100 security tools and a large SOC team and a large security personnel setup, and everything in between where you have the managed security services provider. Thank you, Justin and Tracy. It looks like there are many paths to Shangri-La, but what are some key recommendations you would provide to the customers, right? We have customers that are small and have a few security tools and maybe a few security personnel supporting their environment. We have the largest customers with hundreds of security tools with a large security team personnel that can support their needs. If we want to normalize this and bring it to a few recommendations for our customers, what would that be? Justin, kick it off, and then we'll hand it off to Tristan.
Yeah, I mean, if we break it down, the definition for zero trust that we set out with this conversation was never trust, always verify, least privilege. So never trust, it goes back to what data sources do I have? What log sources do I have? What kind of information about the normal signs of life or cadence of my environment can I bring in? Never trust. I need data. And I need data to be operationalized, whether that's by technology or people or what have you. Okay, so now we have data. What do we need to do now? We'll always verify. And that can come in a few forms, right? That can be the individuals who are going through the data and identifying anomalies, using that data to make just-in-time decisions. But that can also come in the form of how do we test our security strategy? That's where we start to go into offensive security, exposure management, all of these things where we're not just making the assumption that our architecture is operating the way that we defined it. So never trust, we need the data. Always verify. That can be in the form of how did we use that data? And then how are we probing our environment? How are we validating continuously that our environment is operating the way that it was intended? And then that last piece, that least privilege. Okay, well, I've got data from my environment that I'm aggregating constantly, and I'm applying machine and human expertise to use that data to get wisdom and information. I'm also pressure testing my exposures through exposure management. I'm doing offensive security and continuous validation of my environment as I'm collecting that data so that I'm not blind if a sensor or a data source isn't providing me the information that I need. Okay, now I need to use that to make a decision, whether that is an access control decision for a user that's logging into something or a control decision on the network. It might even be in my supply chain. Do I accept this technology and put it in my data center? Do I run this application in my hyperscaler? Or do I let my CEO use this device to manage some of the most critical information in my company? Who touched it, who had access to it before they turned it on. So that's where I would say would be the best place to start and kind of action on these. Tracy, what about you?
Yeah, Justin, that's all really good. I think I just have a couple things to piggyback off of that. Is really there's lots of approaches to a zero trust journey, but to be fully zero trust compliant, you really have to address and provide solutioning across all the pillars that are related to zero trust, because those pillars are going to drive how the system collects and logs data. It's going to drive how everything interconnects. It's going to drive how things feed into AI, ML in order to create an environment where you can leverage automation, et cetera. It also is important to keep in mind as you're exploring what makes the most sense for you is we want to minimize the impact to users. And that's why sometimes a comprehensive solution where you don't have all that tech debt and IT debt create space for you to make sure that we are minimizing the impact to users so that we all have the best experience while still meeting the comprehensive need for data security at its best and finest. And then the last thing I would add is it's always good to have scalability. And so even with systems that are taking a greenfield approach like Project Fort Zero, you still have the ability to scale that across your enterprise, all the way from large enterprise system to a more remote system to on-scene, smaller scaled systems. So there's a lot that can be thought through as organizations explore what path makes the most sense to them, all while taking a look at and through the lens of where am I or am I not willing to accept risk?
Well, I love what was said. To summarize, right, let's start by assessing the needs, understand where you are in this journey, right? Build a roadmap towards it because your roadmap will be dictated by what your needs are and will be unique to each customer. And then, first and foremost, as you work towards reducing this risk and managing this risk for your environment, be aware business drives the zero trust environment, not the other way around. So I love what was said here, and that was my takeaway here as a summary. So thanks, Justin, Tracy. Appreciate your time today. This was very valuable, and I look forward to more conversations like this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.